Hey, welcome back to the Disney Plus Everyday Challenge, and I just broke my tablet. Today we have Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. This is George Lucas's 1999 return to the saga. It had been 16 years since we had gotten anything Star Wars beyond action figures. Put this down. If you were not alive during that time, and honestly, I've been alive through every era, every trilogy, and I remember seeing the original film in the theaters, and I'm that old. Gray hair. This is at 2 hours and 16 minutes, but 1999 was the most exciting time in the world for a Star Wars fan. It's kind of hard to describe. We had that kind of fervor back in 2015 with The Force Awakens, but I can say, yeah, it was exciting in 2015, obviously, but without a pervasive internet experience. The internet, the internet was still very new at that point. It was not something that we would go to watch videos, or there was no YouTube. There was no. We had AOL, we had chat, and we had a few message boards and things like that. But there were spoilers. Obviously, there's certainly plenty of spoilers got leaked out. But for those of us who were trying to avoid all that, we were. It was crazy. It was a crazy time. I remember when the first trailer came out, I recorded it off the television on my VCR. And this is 23 years ago. This is 23 years ago. So much has changed. So it was on Entertainment Tonight, but I wouldn't watch it on television because I believed I had to see it in the theater. My experience had to be in the theater. And so I went to a local movie theater, and I bought a ticket for a matinee on a Sunday afternoon, even though the trailer had already been released on Friday, and I had it on VHS. I could have watched it at home. I went and bought a matinee ticket for the earliest showing in the afternoon that I could get, and I jumped from theater to theater watching the trailers until I found a theater that had the Star Wars Episode 1 trailer. There's 9 screens, and I had to go through all 9 of them until I finally found Rugrats the movie. I don't know why I didn't think of that earlier. It would have been the first one. I spent hours in that theater watching the same trailers. A Thin Red Line, I think I saw a bunch of times. Just so many freaking trailers. And I finally, in front of Rugrats, saw Episode 1 trailer with the tanks coming over the hill, and the Gungans coming out of the mist, and all that stuff. Wipe them out, all of them, that kind of stuff. Goosebumps everywhere. That's how seriously I took the entire Star Wars experience, and I watched a whole 2 minutes of Rugrats, and then I left. So my entire afternoon was just watching trailers over and over again. That's how obsessed I was with Star Wars, and still am. I still love Star Wars. I'm a bit older and maybe a little bit more mature, but I'm still going to Star Wars Celebration. Hey, check this out. I have this available. This is me and Ray Park. Yeah, see that my ring. Me and Ray Park. That's Darth Maul. That's Darth Maul. I blocked him from escaping from the Topps booth at Star Wars Celebration in Denver, Colorado. I handed my expensive film camera to somebody, and they took a picture of me with him. Didn't charge me a thing. Just, hey, Ray, can I get a picture? Sure, mate. And we got a picture. That's kind of crazy. So, anyway, I'm going to talk about the movie now. When it comes to Star Wars, though, it's not just about the movie. It's about the experience. It's about everything that comes around it. I mean, for some people, yes, it's just another movie. Anytime a Star Wars movie comes out, or a Star Wars TV show series on Disney Plus, is just another thing to watch. For many of us, it is a much bigger deal. It is. I can't classify Star Wars. I can't judge Star Wars on the same level as I do just any other film that I would go see. Yes, in 1999, The Matrix was the superior film. I'm going to break the rules of Star Wars fandom and say, yes, The Matrix was the superior film. It came out a few weeks earlier, 3 weeks earlier. Um, and at least in innovation and everything else, despite George Lucas packing every bit of technological innovation he could into making this film, and then a couple years later adding on to that innovation by digitizing Yoda, not just in the second and third films in that prequel trilogy, but he went back to Episode 1, and this is the version you see when you watch it on Disney Plus. They've replaced the puppet Yoda with digital Yoda. They have extended the pod racing scene, so you get introductions of all the pod racers. You get vendors hawking slimy frog-like things. You get more racing action. It's a lot going on. There's a lot more in this version that you see on Disney Plus. He didn't bother putting a special edition release of this out there. I do not think I would have it if he did. They just upgraded it. So, in many people's eyes, having the puppety Yoda was a proper thing. And that's what Ewan McGregor had recently commented about, how he, when he was talking to Pedro Pascal about their experience with Star Wars, he liked working with the puppet Yoda because he was like a total nerd about how, puppet Yoda. Come on. But they had to. They liked the way the Yoda looked in Episode 2 and 3, so they had to throw him into Episode 1. So, yeah, there's a lot of stuff to talk about in this. It is, yes, the most infamous of all these Star Wars films. And besides people's rather strong opinions about The Last Jedi, this is still considered the most disliked. For a number of reasons, but I think as we get further and further away from it, it stands up better. You can easily do the quick and dirty jump on the bandwagon kind of insults for this movie. You just go, Jar Jar Binks sucks. You can do the kid is bad actor, whatever. You can do all that crap, and the writing is hard. The dialogue is pretty rough. I mean, George is more of an editor than he is a director, and this is actually, I think, his first return to directing since Return of the Jedi. So he's had been pretty much resting on his laurels for the most part for a good number of years, just raking in the money through ILM and LucasArts and everything else over the years. Which is great, which is fine. He built a dynasty through Star Wars, through this funky little tribute to Flash Gordon and Buck Rogers, but and it got away from him. It got away from him to such a degree that it's like, okay, you know what? It's time to go back and tell that Darth Vader story, that origin story for Darth Vader. And honestly, technically the entire trilogy, yes, it's the Skywalker saga. It is. You would have to. Until the sequel trilogy, it was Skywalker as in Anakin Skywalker, his rise and fall, or his fall and rise at the end. Spoiler. But then adding on the sequel trilogy, which was not under his control at all because he sold the rights, the ownership of Star Wars Lucasfilm to Disney, which is why we have all Star Wars on Disney. He may not have been fully happy with the direction they took it, but I personally believe that it was a good choice. Maybe not perfect. Maybe there's things I would have done differently, but we're not talking about those. We're talking about Episode 1. So what is it about Episode 1 that is good and bad? Like I said, you can complain about Jar Jar Binks till you run out of breath, and people just love to do that. I mean, it's a way of feeling superior, I guess, just going, I am such a decisive, I have a discerning mind when it comes to film, and I just know things with Jar Jar Binks in them suck. Who cares? You know what? It's a kid's film, and of any of these films, of any of the films in the saga, this is more of a children's film than anything else because it stars a child. It centers around a child. Everybody else is an adult. I mean, sure, you got Luke and Leia, they're 20-ish, something like that. We got in the original trilogy, Han's much older. You look at Rey and Finn and Poe, they're all adults in the sequel trilogy. This one is about a child, and of course he is only a child in the first film, but in this case, uh, George made an entry level film, a film that was meant for a new generation of Star Wars fans, and yeah, we all in the '70s liked in the '80s could identify with these heroes, even though we might have been 7 or 8 when we saw them, or 10 or 13, and yeah, it works. But in this case, we're meant to be the kid in this sense. In many ways, we're the kid. Where I think this film does falter a bit is the fact that it's sort of just it's showcasing different characters. Even though we're supposed to be looking at this, Anakin's supposed to be our entry character to say, "Hey, what if I was in his place?" He is still sort of somebody George is showing to us. Like, we're not Qui-Gon. We don't have the wisdom of Qui-Gon. We're not Obi-Wan because he's not utilized a whole lot until the very end. He's asked questions. He, has conversations with Qui-Gon. And for the most part, he's in the background. He's a background character for most of this story, even though we know Obi-Wan. The only characters we know from the start, I mean, we see Obi-Wan first from the original. It's, of course, Ewan McGregor, not... Oh my god, why can I not remember his name? Okay, forget it. My brain is just not working tonight. Holy cow, why am I not remembering Obi-Wan's name? The actor. Good grief, how old am I? Oh, I gotta get my brain medicine. Anyway, Alec Guinness. Yeah, it's not Alec Guinness. It's Ewan McGregor, and we get to see the origin of Ewan McGregor, and it becomes very much an arc for these 3 films of Anakin and Obi-Wan's experience. It's their meeting, their struggles as war breaks out, and then how they separate in the third in this trilogy. And it's again, there's kind of, we're watching them from afar. We don't feel like this movie does not let us feel like we are a part of this adventure. We're just watching the adventure, and that, I think, is the greatest failing of this film, because I realize that George has a ton of exposition and a ton of things introduced to us. It's the galaxy we know, but in a really different light. We get to see Coruscant for the first time. We're introduced to a new planet called Naboo. We get to see Tatooine again. Tatooine seems to be the center of everything, as many people complain these days when it comes to Boba Fett, the Book of Boba Fett, or the Mandalorian. They always seem to go back to Tatooine for whatever reason. This backwater planet without water that is supposed to be the furthest thing away from anything important going on in the galaxy. Seems to be the hub of everything. And maybe not the birthplace, because I noticed here something I didn't really think about before, but Anakin says he became a slave when he was about 3. He doesn't remember much, but it's possible that they came from another planet. I don't read every single Wikipedia article, so maybe somebody has more knowledge about every single detail of where he was born and everything else. Yes, there are theories as to how he was conceived, but we have not gotten anything fully definitive 100%. It's meant, I think right now it's meant for speculation. Maybe we'll get that answer someday. That's a cold hard truth, but I think we're staying away from the Skywalker saga for now. I don't think we're going to be talking about any more Skywalkers unless he just makes a guest appearance every so often in a certain series on Disney Plus. Yeah, and so, like I said, the biggest failing is that we are not, well, we're pulled into this galaxy. We are not pulled into the plight of these characters. It's like they're almost on stage, and we're watching them from a distance. And it's, other films of that time and also since. I mean, when we're with the Avengers, it feels like we're among those characters as they struggle, they fight, they persevere, they lose. in every way, and there's a bit of a more emotional pull. The only emotional pull I felt in this was Anakin saying goodbye to his mother, and that's a really big deal. I mean, it's also kind of a, it tells you that it's one more thing that kind of tells you the Jedi aren't that great. The Jedi kind of are jerks, where they don't necessarily help people who are enslaved when they find out about it. Yeah, I realize Tatooine might be a backwater planet that's not within the Republic officially, and it's controlled by Hutts, and they realize they probably create a whole lot of problems with the Hutts if they start freeing slaves. But you are the good guys who protect people. People aren't commodities. Shouldn't be, anyway. It's just, that Qui-Gon tried to free Anakin's mom, but they aren't the. He didn't try too hard, and they're not the only slaves there. It's just weird. Um, but yeah, he only cared about Anakin because Anakin had the midichlorian count. He might have been a Jedi. He might have been the chosen one. So it's you get this struggle where you're just watching them go through these motions from afar. So much of it is exposition. So much of it is telling you who Anakin is, or who Anakin might be, and who Anakin should be. And then you're basically also the person that is probably the biggest focus is Queen Amidala, Padme, and even then, yes, it doesn't take a genius to figure out that the Queen and Padme are the same person, but it's we are not really brought into her life. You feel that she has feelings for this little boy who she barely knows, but risked his life in order to get them off that horrible planet. But I don't know. Just because somebody, helps you fix your ship because they want to race, it doesn't mean you feel squishy about them. Just thank you, little boy. I mean, I'll be like, oh man, you're great. You're like my best friend, and you're not my best friend, but you're like awesome. Thank you for doing that. That's kind of thing that I would be going for. But I don't know. I mean, it's setting the seeds for obviously the romance that's supposed to happen. In order, if that didn't happen, we wouldn't have Luke and Leia. So it's just it's hard to make a connection. And again, I think George had a lot of intent on making this a showcase for the technology that he and his crew, his team, are so good at creating. Sure, saving money, but the future of movie sets is making them all fully digital. Everybody's walking around on green screens and pretending to interact with creatures who aren't there. Yeah, maybe. I mean, we've rolled back from that, even in the Star Wars universe with Disney and the Mandalorian and the Book of Boba Fett. Those sets, a lot of them are very real, or we have created environments that seem physically there behind them without using green screen, with using the void and whatever you call it. But it's amazing. But George's technology had to exist before we could get to a point where we could use the volume, not the void, the volume, before we could use the volume. And if you watch the documentaries on Disney Plus, you'll understand what I'm talking about for the Mandalorian. And I imagine the Book of Boba Fett will have one soon if it doesn't already. I didn't check. But yeah, those kind of things are important. And George didn't start to decide that I'm going to do episode 1 until he saw Steven Spielberg's Jurassic Park. When he saw that both practical and digital effects put a dinosaur among human beings in a realistic fashion, is like, how can I not do Star Wars now with this technology? Possible. Yes, ILM made that, but it's his company. But hey, it's all that with it's him and Steven always working things out and always building each other up. It's a kind of a great thing. But yeah, some of these effects don't age too well. But that's all right. Things change. I actually feel in a number of ways the way that a lot of the line delivery is, a lot of the way that people move in it. It is. it feels like an older film than it actually is. Than rather than 1999, it feels like it's almost early 80s. Not that it has the VHS grain to it or anything else, but it's, I don't know. It just feels older than it really is. And yeah, we're gonna improve upon that technologically in later films, in even just that prequel saga. But it's still, it doesn't age perfectly. It doesn't age perfectly, but it's so this story is very much essential to the entire saga. Um, Whether you like Jar Jar or Little Anakin or the writing or whatever else, whether you like that or not, it's still essential viewing. It's still in many ways beautiful. Love the Naboo ship, which of course the N1 is also shown up now in the Book of Boba Fett. It's in the hands of the Mandalorian, and if anybody ever thought, I mean, there's plenty of people who thought, oh well, now Disney has it. They're trying to avoid any connections to that crappy prequel series, and you know what? Now that they've failed at their sequel trilogy, they're going to try to stay away from anything that points to the sequel trilogy now that it's done. Sorry, but that's bull. You can see connections to the prequel and the sequel trilogy left and right in everything that they make nowadays, and it's not going to stop. And that includes comics and books and everything else. So, yeah, get used to it. To those of you who are still complaining about The Last Jedi or Rise of Skywalker or Force Awakens or anything other than the original trilogy. Sorry. I love the original trilogy. It is my favorite trilogy. I grew up with it, but you know what? I love, like I said earlier, I judge Star Wars on different merits than any other film I see. Even if it's Back to the Future or whatever else, I don't see it as any of these films as normal films because these are my lifeblood. It's like a new injection of blood, like infusion of blood. Anytime I get to see something new Star Wars. So can you imagine? I couldn't imagine when it was 1983 that I'd ever see another Star Wars film again. And here comes 1999, standing in line overnight for tickets and then standing in line overnight to get our seats because they weren't reserved seats back then. And there weren't online ticketing, at least, no, there wasn't online ticketing. We did stand in line. I think there was some places that might have done that, but not where I was. I was in North Virginia at the time. No way. There was no, I know exactly where I sat, where I stood in line all night, my group of friends, and we loved that film. We loved this film the first night we saw it. We did. We cheered along with everybody else. Jar Jar or nothing. We loved it. And then we saw that everybody else was like, it wasn't great. This could have been better. Yeah, and then we all went, yeah, Jar Jar. I did too. We all went for the easy put down, and in order to be cool, we had to all agree with what everybody else was making a joke about. But we're grown up now. It's time to get over it. Jar Jar may not be the greatest character who's ever made, and I know some friends who honestly dislike him for valid other reasons because he's seems like a racist stereotype, along with some other seemingly racist stereotypes also in the film, which I'll give him that. It seems like that, but I don't think that was George or Ahmed Best's intent when they created the character at all. It was not intentional. It may sound like it, it may seem like it, may feel like it, but I don't think that was the intent. And Jake Lloyd, I think, has gotten way too much crap about this role. This is a kid who just came off of working on a film with Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sinbad in Jingle All the Way. Holy crap. And you're like, oh, hey, you know what? You want to do Star Wars next? Come on. That's just nuts. Yeah, and there's always complaints that why do we need a Darth Vader story where he's a little kid? Could we have started later? There's a million discussions. There's message boards choked full over the last 23 years. Can't believe it's been that long that talk about all this stuff. So I'm already really going really long in this. All I can say is watch it again. with an open mind. If you're a Star Wars fan, you don't really need to be forced uh, to try to experience it. But try to look for new things. Try to look for little details and things that you didn't see before. And each time I find something else. And what did I find this time? There's some stuff. Just how it seemed like his mom was like, "Oh, I don't like you doing. Watto doesn't want you racing like that." But then Watto likes making profit off of you racing. It's just weird. Um, and there's just little details here and there that jump out, but it's still enjoyable, and it's the great introduction of Darth Maul, who is completely underutilized, and but still is in one of the greatest scenes in Star Wars history. That big battle, that great introduction with the blades popping out after the doors slide open and the music, Duel of Fates playing. John Williams just made one of the best pieces of Star Wars music since the original trilogy. With that, he just knocked it out of the park. And I found out recently that, oh, come on. I found out recently that he is going to do the theme for Kenobi on Disney Plus. So that's great. He's the guy who's getting up there, and I love seeing him at the Hollywood Bowl whenever I get a chance. He doesn't conduct for very long, but all of his hits are played. So that's some good stuff. Anyway, the music is great. Sound, Ben Burt does some amazing stuff in this. This is the man who created the sound of the lightsabers and the droids and everything else that you hear. The AT-ATs in Empire Strikes Back, all those sounds created by Ben Burt. And you'll see him in the background, actually, in the final scene, one of the final scenes, where Padme, or Queen Amidala, is talking with Palpatine. He's in the background behind her, along with Rick McCallum, the producer of the film. Anyway, Ben Burt, one of my favorite things that comes out of this film is the sound of the pod racers, specifically Sebulba's. The sound of the pod racers are just so meaty. I mean, George Lucas loves race cars, loves racing, loves those classic 50s custom cars. He made American Graffiti as a tribute to that era. So yeah, he loves that kind of stuff, and that's why that every single Star Wars movie has a race sequence, like a chase or a race, a high speed craziness. And the pod race was literally him trying to outdo himself. The last time we saw something like that was the Moon of Endor with the speeder bikes. But this thing, it just blew up. And imagine hearing it in the theater. I mean, I think the last time I saw this thing in the theater was when they released. Oh man, when they released the 3D version of this film 10 years ago. That's in 2011, I think it was. And that's the only one they made 3D, on that 3D craze that was happening at the time. Anyway, I've said way too much, and maybe not enough. But Star Wars Episode 1, yeah, maybe it is not the greatest Star Wars film. Big deal. But I love Star Wars, and I'll watch it again and again, along with all the other ones. Give me a reason to marathon this, and I will do it. Yeah, so give it another chance, give it a shot. Feel free to pick it apart if you want to, but also take the time just to enjoy just little things and all the things that we've discovered and learned in the years since, on Disney Plus, with all those shows that make references to all this old stuff, all the Tatooine stuff especially. There's connections everywhere, and to me, that I enjoy that, finding all those little Easter eggs. I enjoy finding all the connections between all the eras, Jabba the Hutt and everything else. That kind of stuff is cool. It's kind of fun. So yeah, to me it's great, but I realize it's not everybody's bag. Everybody's cup of tea. But you know what? Don't watch it then. Nobody's making it. There's lots else to watch on Disney Plus, like this thing we're going to choose right now.
606.
606. Oh, that's kind of close to somebody else's number. 606. Come on. Okay. I think this is a live action remake of the classic cartoon. I'm not sure. But it's a movie, and it is Underdog. Underdog. That's what we're watching next on the Disney Plus Everyday Challenge. I'll see you back here tomorrow with that.